For more on this, we're joined live in Qatar by the chief sports reporter for The Times, chief football writer for The Times, Henry Winter. Henry, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Henry.
Good morning, Natalie. Good morning, Dean. Still celebrating one of the greatest games I've ever seen.
Well, you say one of. Is it one of, or is it the best, would you say?
Probably is the best. I mean, club perspective, you can go back to Manchester United 99 in terms of that dramatic element there. Liverpool, Istanbul 2005. But in terms of the greatest game of all, in the greatest competition of all, in the greatest sport of all, I think 3-3 in a World Cup final, a hat-trick from someone like Kylian Mbappe, who then doesn't finish on the winning side, and then you get the narrative of Messi woven in as amongst, Dean would know better than I would, amongst the best three players of all time, with Maradona and Pelé. I mean, it just had everything.
Henry, if the game hadn't turned out the way it did turn out, we would have been saying that France have got a virus in the camp, and all of them look flat. I mean, 80 minutes on the clock. I didn't see that game turning the way it did. Did you?
I was slightly surprised when he took Di Maria off, because I thought Scaloni's tactics were absolutely brilliant. 4-3-3, Di Maria running at Koundé, Dembele having to track back, giving away the penalty. And then I thought when Di Maria went off on 60 minutes, maybe he wasn't fully fit. Maybe he just thought, Scaloni thought he could see the game out at 2-0. But then, we've seen it with this French team. They weren't, at full throttle when they played England, but they can move up that gear. And Mbappe can move up that gear. And particularly when he moved into the centre, and Deschamps, we talk about managers making decisive decisions early. He did it, 3 minutes before half-time? Took Giroud off. He didn't look completely happy about it, and you can understand that. But Mbappe going through the middle, flooding the midfield and the wide areas with pace, caused Argentina so many problems.
It's not often a player can score a hat-trick and still end up on the losing side, and there'll be some disappointment, or massive disappointment from France, but it is all about Argentina. It is all about Lionel Messi, and the inevitable question, Henry, about does this now cement himself as the GOAT?
Greatest of all time. I mean, the first World Cup I went to was 1990, and I saw Maradona, probably 4 years after his pomp, but still magnificent, being kicked to bits by Cameroonians and then Brazilians. I saw the Brazil game when he just sort of turned on the halfway line and just sort of wiggled forward, and then with his right foot played Caniggia through to score past Taffarel. So I will put Maradona absolutely up there. I will put Pelé up there. I mean, Dean will know, when people make comparisons between now and, say, 20 years ago, the boots are different, the lifestyle's different, the pitch is different, the refereeing's different. Yeah. I mean, Dean would probably, when he was playing against Arsenal, would be kicked 3 times in rotation in the first 5 minutes, and that was probably in the tunnel, whereas that doesn't happen now. Messi gets protected now, and rightly, and we're seeing beautiful football because of it.
Martin Keown still got my teeth in his elbow.
Oh, lovely.
We just had the conversation before you come on there, and I said, well, it's got to be Messi now. After watching him live, but I have seen the video of Maradona where, I mean, when it reminds you of how good he was, just another genius.
But it's interesting, actually. Luke has texted in while you're on the phone to us there, Henry, and he said we're using GOAT in the sort of wrong way. Rather than calling it greatest of all time, we can still use the word GOAT, but think of it as greatest of the era. And that's certainly something we could suggest with Lionel Messi.
Yeah, my spelling's not so good for that one. I also think goat. I mean, goat's a fine creature and a regimental goat, and I understand all that. But actually, you want to be a lion. Can't we have some acronym for a lion? I think Messi's not a goat. He's more impressive than that. If you see a goat in a field, you don't think of Messi.
Do you know what? You've got time on the plane, I'm sure, to come up with the acronym that Lion works for. So hopefully you can do that for us.
Especially in first class, Henry.
No, right. I'm so far down the back. I'm actually clinging to the tail, and I'm sure you won't tell anyone of this. But this is how disorganised I am. I've just turned up at the wrong airport, and I thought it's really quiet.
Henry.
There are no Argentinians here. There were a couple of Sopwith camels on the runway, and I realised I was very much the sort of
Henry, make you feel better. Airport. I'll make you feel better. I done the same thing.
Did you? Do you know some of the guys that I was travelling back with did exactly the same?
It was on my boarding pass. It was on my boarding pass that we had to go to that airport, Dubai airport. It's the other one.
Dubai. You're definitely in the wrong place. It was Dubai.
Doha. It's the other one.
Oh, all right.
Well,
then.
Dean, what I'm more worried about is that there was a bloke there who said he was from Hertz Car Rental, and I gave him the keys to my car and wandered off. And so there's this guy sort of disappearing off with a car, and there's an empty parking bay at International.
It's ended a bit calamitous for you then, Henry. Just get your thoughts on the tournament as a whole then. What have you made of the last few weeks in Qatar?
Not the greatest tournament, certainly the greatest final. People friendly, but then you walk into the grounds and you think, what costs were these built at to the migrant workers?
Sure, yeah.
And I've just left the flats that I was staying in now and just said goodbye to all the people who work there. And they're from Nepal, they're from Bangladesh. And I wanted to give them a present. And I gave them a cricket bat, because we've been playing a little bit of cricket out here when we could, not very successfully, particularly when the caretaker came out, pointed at his windows. But you know what? They're fantastic people. But your heart goes out to them because you talk to them, and you inevitably, at a certain age, you talk about, have you got kids? And these guys and women, they're thousands of miles away from home, and they've got 2-3-year-olds there who they haven't seen for 18 months. And I don't know, particularly poignant at a time like this with Christmas and family and all that. And your hearts go out to them, and some will never return.
But yeah, put that to one side for a second. I know it's a serious matter, but has this been the best World Cup you've been to?
Do you know what? I really enjoyed 98. 24, 24, you go to a real football country, Dean, and that. You go to a place like Brazil where, you walk down the Copacabana, it's mad with football. You turn down a side street, it's mad with football. You go into someone's front room, it's mad with football. With Qatar, yes, the main drag was mad with football. The souks were good and the fans were brilliant everywhere. But without the Moroccan and the Argentinian fans, I didn't detect much of a football soul to the place. It's not the best World Cup I've been to. And of all times, I think you go 70 and 82.
Well, you did mention 1998. That was the year that Kylian Mbappe was born. He's going to be celebrating his 24th birthday tomorrow. After what you've seen of him, and listen, this is an obvious question because we know what he's like when he plays for PSG, for example, but he's already just scoring incredible amount of goals in such a short space of time for France. This is a player that's just going to go on and break further records, isn't he?
Well, and he'll probably be at Real Madrid within the year, and he'll do amazing things with them and rack up Champions Leagues and Ballon d'Ors. What I liked about him was the fact that he really dragged France out of a hole. I love that character in One So Young. We saw it obviously on a lesser level, but with Jude Bellingham in England, when you just see natural leaders there. They don't need the armband to be it. They just take that responsibility on themselves for their team, for their country. And I really felt for Mbappe, particularly when he had to go up at the end and collect his award, surrounded by celebrating Argentinians. And I just thought he showed a lot of class in defeat. He was obviously, everyone was trying to console him. But look, he'll be back and he'll be a threat. And, he may go on and win the Euros now.
Henry, got to ask you this. I mean, obviously Wales crawled out of the tournament, disappointing, but England getting knocked out in the quarterfinals. Gareth Southgate's obviously decided to carry on with the job. How do you see that situation?
He has to win Euro 2024. With this generation of players, I don't think they will, because there can be some fantastic teams there. But the fact is that this will be his fourth attempt. Personally, I feel, and I felt coming out of the ground at Wembley last year, that was England's biggest chance. And the fact that Southgate didn't react as other coaches would. You saw how Scaloni reacted today. You saw how yesterday. You saw how Deschamps reacted. You react early. You're decisive. Particularly with 5 subs, you can make that extra gamble and change early. So I don't know. I think it's going to be difficult. But you look at these players. You look at Bellingham. Look at Foden. Foden is playing under a great coach in Guardiola. Look at Bukayo Saka, how he's been playing for Arsenal. England have got some fantastic players. Calvin Phillips getting back to form. 2 fullbacks coming in, Chilwell and James as well. Kane, will still be there in 2 years' time. Henderson, no one should write Henderson off. What a character and leader he's been for England out here. Declan Rice, again, another leader. England got some fantastic players. I think they need a left-footed centre-half and they need backup for Kane, but Southgate cannot complain about the quality of players that the academies are producing for him.
No, Henry, I think now, it's just as important tactically is that the players like you. I think it's got to that stage in management, especially at this international level. If the players like you, you've got half a chance. And I think the players like Gareth Southgate.
They definitely do. honestly, that even though I've been critical of him, I talk to the players on and off the record. They respect him. They love reporting for England. The England and FA staff just make it a home from home. People always talk about a club atmosphere with England. It's not. It's more of a family atmosphere. And remember, a lot of these kids, because they play, the kids like sort of when they're 16, 17, they're playing so many age group games for England. They're probably seeing more of each other, their teammates, than they are of their own family. So that generation have grown up together. Foden and Gallagher and people like that have won under 17 championships, and they do have that bond, and that is blossoming at senior level. So look, England have the players. It's just about whether Southgate's got the tactical nous later on in games to make the right decisions.
You are at the right airport now, aren't you, Henry?
Well, I hope so. I mean, my only concern is that everyone seems to be heading towards Buenos Aires.
Don't get
So you
on
might
that
not see me for a couple of weeks.
Don't get on that plane.
You're delaying, Henry. You're not kidding us that you're at the back of the plane. You're telling the pilot, "Hang on a minute, I'm just doing an interview with talkSPORT."
Yeah, that's right. He just said to us to manual. I thought it was the advertising break.
Listen. Oh, look, thank
Have a
you
good
so
flight.
much for joining us. Yeah, safe
Pleasure.
travels
Have a lovely
back.
Christmas.
You too.
All right.
Henry Winter, their chief football writer for The Times, joining us to reflect on Qatar 2022 and that victory for Argentina as well.